Hello friends, you are on Ruslan Belov's channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of September 12, 2025. Let's move straight to the front line. Over the past 24 hours, the most important and interesting developments have come from the Zaporizhzhia direction, which at the moment is the most active and dynamic. It is here that the Russian army, more precisely the Vostok, East, and Dnieper groupings, are showing the highest results in terms of ground advances. So let's begin, and we'll start with the Dnieper grouping, which according to various neutral and pro-Ukrainian cartographers, has significantly improved its positions in the area of the settlement of Stepnohirsk. More precisely, all territories south of Stepnohirsk, all the way down to the settlement of Kamenskoye, are currently under full and confident control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The bridgehead is being expanded, positions are being improved, and preparations are underway for the assault on Stepnohirsk itself. At the same time, the Russian side has already established full fire control over the only actual road artery supplying the Ukrainian grouping inside Stepnohirsk. In these frames, we can see a Russian drone destroying yet another Ukrainian armed forces vehicle. This strike took place exactly at this point. In other words, that's it. The supply routes are effectively cut. Stepnohirsk, of course, still has some ability to receive supplies, but the quality of this logistics has already been maximally disrupted. Next, we move to the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction, where the pace of the offensive is not only not slowing down, but actually seems to be acquiring the features of geometric progression. Today, as you can see, the map has undergone major changes. The settlement of Ternovoye, as well as territories further to the west, have been marked as under Russian control. Also, territory just southward, in the area of Poltavka and Olgovskoye, has been marked. Let's first look at how the map has changed. This is how it looked just yesterday. And this is how it looks today. Recall that yesterday the Vostok grouping published 2 video materials showing that the settlement of Sosnovka came under the control of the Russian armed forces. 3 flags were raised in different parts of the village, confirming full control over the settlement. Slightly further south, the first flag appeared on the southeastern edge of Novomikhailovka. Here, 1 Russian soldier raised the flag near a building with a green roof. The building was geolocated. Based on yesterday's updates, we made some small color markings, and today we see that overall, the front is apparently collapsing. Today, the Vostok grouping has already published footage from the settlement of Dnipropetrovsk, the old name, or Ternovoy, the new name. In these frames, we can observe a similar picture: artillery preparation, aerial bomb strikes, FPV drone operations, clearing of buildings, and in the final seconds, several flags being raised in different parts of the settlement. If we return to the map, the flags were raised in the southern farms, the central farms, and on the northern outskirts. Based on this objective control footage, we marked a significant area stretching from Ternovoy to the settlements of Shevchenko and Malievka. Once again, this is how the map looked yesterday. Most of the territory that was marked today was still considered disputed yesterday, but today there is no doubt that the Russian army has pushed further west. Moreover, neutral cartographers added information regarding Sosnovka. According to their data, not only the central part of the village came under Russian control, but also Ryadovaya Gully, Ternovaya Gully, and part of the Verona River, stretching toward Velikaya Mikhailovka and Aristopol. Pro-Ukrainian cartographers have also updated their maps with significant markings. According to their mapping services, over the past day the Russian army managed to outflank the settlement of Berezovoye, and based on this configuration, one could assume that by tomorrow the settlement may fall under full control of the Russian armed forces. Today it is also reported that Novomikhailovka has been completely cleared. This information is being spread by pro-Russian sources, and the first objective footage has begun to appear, showing air bomb strikes on Ukrainian positions in the settlement of Kalinovskoye. There is a very high probability that tomorrow this settlement too will be marked in Russia's favor. Further south, pro-Russian sources report an advance on a broad front from the settlements of Levadnoye and Novodarovka toward the settlements of Okhotniche and Novaya Ivanovka. That means large fields and a significant territory have also been marked. In other words, we can clearly see that the offensive pace is indeed taking on geometric proportions. The Russian army is getting closer and closer to Highway R85. Within just a few, perhaps weeks, Russian forces will come right up to settlements such as Uspanovka, Novonikolayevka, and Krasnogorskoye, as well as other villages situated along the Yanchel River. This small river and the settlements along it are at this stage a priority target for the Russian army. Here's roughly the way the river flows. And accordingly, it is this red line where the fighting and the advance of the Vostok grouping is taking place. If Russian forces succeed in taking control of the river line, they will be able to move right up to Highway R85, to the settlement of Pokrovskoye, and also to very close distances near Gulyaipol. In fact, the Zaporizhzhia direction right now is extremely interesting, because despite all the statements by various political figures, experts, and even Syrskyi himself, despite their claims that the main task, the main goal, and the top priority for the Russian army is Pokrovsk, the Pokrovsk agglomeration, Dobropoli, and Konstantinovka, we can see from the actual situation on the ground that priority number one for the Russian Federation is the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the highest offensive momentum is being recorded. It is possible that by the time Syrskyi realizes his mistake, that he misjudged the priorities of the Russian army, it will already be too late. Now let's move on to the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Recall that just recently, Russian units managed to completely clear the settlement of Udakhnoye, and since then quite a few days have passed. Now the first objective control footage is beginning to appear, showing the Russian army striking with FABs at the next Ukrainian armed forces temporary deployment site in this sector, the Pokrovskaya mine. This mine is a key, strategic defensive stronghold for Ukrainian units, and it is precisely over this site that heavy fighting has now begun. If the Ukrainian army loses control over this area, then once Russian units secure the mine and the surrounding spoil heaps and high ground, they will be able to shorten the distance to the M30 highway to about 6.5 kilometers, or even 6.3 kilometers. That is already practically a negligible distance for FPV drone operators. Control over this mine will, so to speak, reduce the throughput capacity and logistical capabilities for Ukrainian units across the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. As for the agglomeration itself, today a number of pro-Western experts claimed that the armed forces of Ukraine once again withdrew from the central part of Pokrovsk, and that the settlement of Pokrovsk and these territories, currently considered disputed, had again returned under Ukrainian control. At the moment, it is difficult to determine how accurate this information is. We are waiting for geolocations or possible confirmations from official sources, but it is precisely here that the Ukrainian side is now conducting counterstrikes. For now, we are not marking anything on the map, but we keep this information in mind. Siversk sector, a small marking on the map, is noted in the area of the settlement of Serebryanka. Ukrainian sources are publishing objective control footage showing that Russian forces attempted to attack from Serebryanka towards Siversk using a large amount of equipment. The equipment was abandoned, the infantry dispersed into tree lines and individual strongpoints, and the Ukrainian side gradually destroyed the Russian tanks. All of these events happened at this location. Recall that until today, this sector was considered disputed territory, but today, apparently, there is no longer any doubt that the strongpoint in the southeast of Serebryanka has returned under Russian control. At the same time, footage has emerged from the settlement of Yampol. These are the first frames from this area. Previously, we had only received reports from various sources that the Russian army was gradually advancing in this direction. Today, however, we have the first objective control footage indicating that battles have begun for the ostrich farm. At least for now, drones are clearing the area. It is possible that in the near future, Russian units will move to ground operations here as well. Kupiansk sector. Here, there are no major changes. Active fighting continues. Cartographers, one after another, confirm information about Russian advances in the northern part of Kupiansk, but as you can see, so far without 100% confirmation. Now let's look at what is happening in the political arena. We begin with Poland, where for several days now there has been a certain panic and desire to act. Recall that recently drones of Russian manufacture crossed the state border between Ukraine and Poland and entered Polish territory. These were not combat drones. Some of the drones were later found approximately 300 kilometers from the border, which is in fact something impossible for this type of drone. On the basis of all these events, Poland decided to strengthen its defensive capabilities, including with the help of Western and European countries. Information first appeared that the French and the British were planning to transfer several Eurofighter and Rafale fighter jets to Poland. Later, this information was confirmed by French President Macron, who agreed, and indeed at least 3 Rafales are being transferred to Poland. And this is not the only measure taken to strengthen Poland's defenses. Today, it is also reported that 40,000 soldiers have been deployed to the state border between Poland and Belarus. Of course, this is not only connected to the overflight of Russian-made drones into Poland. It is also connected to the fact that today, September 12, 2025, the joint exercises Zapad 2025 between Belarus and Russia begin. In general, these days, we are receiving many different reports from Belarus. Recall once again that yesterday Trump's special envoy, John Cole, arrived in Minsk on an official visit, where he held serious negotiations with the president of Belarus. As a result, the Americans promised, or perhaps already have, lifted sanctions from Belavia, the airline that operates international flights. This is an extremely important step. Now the Union State of Russia and Belarus has a direct flight route from Minsk to the United States. This is indeed a major step toward normalizing relations between the US and Russia. Today, the president of Belarus also made an important statement, according to which the Russian side is ready to fully implement all agreements reached with the American side. But the Belarusian president added that today there are no problems between Belarus, Russia, and the US. The only problems are with the Europeans and with Zelensky, who still believe, hope, and perhaps dream of victory. And we can see that despite all the negotiation processes, despite all the backstage flows and events, the conflict is still escalating. For example, last night on the night of September 12th, the Ukrainian side carried out another massive drone strike against Russian territory. Cartographers and experts note that most of the drones flew north, and the main objective of the Ukrainian authorities and military command was to inflict damage on Russian energy infrastructure, including oil refineries. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported in the morning that during the night, Russian air defenses destroyed or suppressed 221 drones. This is not a record number, but it is still very large. Ukrainian sources in turn published during the night many videos, mostly filmed by local residents, showing strikes on various plants and enterprises. Later in the day, Russian sources reported that one of the Ukrainian armed forces drones either crashed into or struck the Smolensk nuclear power plant. So for now, this is the story. This is the situation. We will continue to watch how events unfold, but one thing is clear. After such a raid, including a drone strike on a nuclear power plant, one should expect, perhaps tonight, perhaps tomorrow night, another massive strike by the Russian Federation using hundreds of drones. The only question now is whether the Russian side will again send drones into western Ukraine, or whether it will limit itself to central, southern, and eastern regions. Because if drones again fly toward Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk, there is a very high probability that Russian-made drones will once again cross the border and enter Polish territory. For now, it seems that they are trying to avoid such a situation or distance themselves from it. But we will see how events unfold further. And that is all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.